Now it's time to get honest here. Roman Reigns has committed the most heinous crime that any professional wrestler could ever commit. He's a handsome, long-haired, wonderful-looking badass who received a main event push at the same time that Daniel Bryan really earned the favour of the crowd. It hasn't helped that his push has continued for many years since. Yes, Reigns' residence in the WWE main event scene has been a controversial topic ever since his ascension of the ladder in the latter half of 2014. Some of the criticism against him included he's not the most natural promo in the world, which is kind of a fair argument, but the fact that he can't wrestle, slow the hell down. Reigns may not be a technician on the level of a Daniel Bryan or a Cesaro or a Pete Dunne, but he's everything a WWE main eventer needs to be in terms of sports entertainment. He's physical, he's explosive, he's athletic, and he's also capable of working with a variety of opponents. This following list looks at 10 truly impressive singles matches that Reigns has taken part in over the last 4 years. Now, understandably, we have limited this to singles matches just because if it wasn't, then there'd be a lot of Shield 6-man tag team bouts on the list. Weren't they brilliant? Weren't they marvellous? So boo him if you like, but don't you dare say that Roman Reigns can't wrestle, as hopefully this list will demonstrate. My name is Jack from Cultaholic.com, and it's time to look at 10 Roman Reigns matches you must see before you die. Join us. Number 10, Roman Reigns vs Randy Orton, SummerSlam 2014. Now, as far as his standing with the crowd went, the first notable cracks in the Roman Reigns facade were visible at the last West Coast SummerSlam, in which the authority-aligned Randy Orton was cheered more than Reigns, whose offense actually drew boos. Oh dear. Now, in terms of the match's content itself, while Orton is also sometimes dismissed as dull and repetitive, he has perhaps the best timing of any WWE superstar. The most memorable spot of the match was certainly Orton countering Reigns' spear by snatching him in his snap power slam. Another spear attempt was again foiled, this time by an RKO, and the idea was that even Orton's best counters were not enough to put away the big dog. As the match progressed, both men were wrestling at an absolutely killer pace, and the crowd were completely jazzed up even though they were cheering for the wrong man. Reigns would only continue to improve as a single star as the years went on, but matches like this one demonstrate just how quickly he picked up the tenets of WWE's main event style early in his singles run. Number 9, Roman Reigns vs Daniel Bryan, FASTLANE 2015. 1 year earlier, due to unyielding smark outrage, WWE hastily inserted Daniel Bryan into the WrestleMania main event scene, and the end result was one of the most celebrated WrestleMania main events of all time. The next year, with the crowd resoundingly rejecting Roman Reigns due to Bryan's demotion from the main event, WWE went with a one-on-one match between the two at Fastlane, planting the seed that maybe, just maybe, they'd change WrestleMania once again, but in reality, this was supposed to be more of a torch-passing ceremony. This didn't quite happen, of course, as Reigns retained his main event WrestleMania match after spearing his way through Bryan's dramatic flying knee attempt. Over the course of the 20-minute bout, the two put together a valiant and honourable fight and emptied everything in their arsenals. Reigns alternated between powerfully dominating and humbly mortal, giving Bryan plenty of offense in a highly physical contest. The idea was to make it look like it could have gone either way, while at the same time putting over Reigns' might and fury, and it didn't hurt having an absolute wizard like Bryan to play off. In the end, although the result didn't go the way that many fans wanted, it showed that Reigns could certainly hang with one of the best in a truly taxing epic. Number 8, Roman Reigns vs Cesaro from the Raw of November 16th, 2015. It's not often that Dave Meltzer offers a rating for matches on free television, but he was more than happy to give quite a sizable amount of snowflakes to the Reigns-Cesaro WWE Championship Tournament bout 6 nights before Survivor Series 2015. There was no doubt that the sustained push of Reigns was going to carry over into the tournament final at the pay-per-view, whether the vocal fans wanted that or not. But since those vocal fans usually enjoy outlying Match of the Year candidates, WWE gave them one. It earned 4.25 stars. This was a seesaw battle and was also a splendid showcase of Cesaro's abilities, and arguably one of the better matches he's actually had with the promotion as well. While WWE had been oddly keen to try and portray the muscular, brutish Reigns as some sort of underdog, in this match, sensibly, it was Cesaro fighting from underneath, despite Cesaro also being a Herculean man of epic proportions. The result was barely ever really in doubt, but leave it to the powers that be to have you believe that for a second, Cesaro was going to eke out a massive upset victory. The match was high impact as we'd expect, but it was also technically sound with some dramatic near falls down the stretch. After a year and a half as a singles wrestler, it was abundantly clear that Reigns belonged exactly on the level that he was. Number 7, Roman Reigns vs SHEAMUS from the Raw of December 14th, 2015. Now, all Roman Reigns' opinions aside, you can't really argue too much that this match wasn't special. After Reigns had turned some heads at the end of TLC the night before by going on an uncontrolled rampage, WWE continued down that path by putting Reigns in an absolutely lawless rematch with Sheamus for the WWE Championship. Yeah, Sheamus was WWE Champion in 2015, I know, it's still surprising. This time, Vince McMahon was also involved, rekindling some of that old Attitude Era McMahon versus Defined Hero formula. The most shocking thing about this match was that the very same Philadelphia crowd that had booed Roman Reigns into oblivion 11 months earlier at the Royal Rumble were now living and dying on his every return as he fought off one injustice against another. His assault of Vince McMahon himself was far more interesting than giving Reigns any corny babyface dialogue to recite, and it sort of cast him as a kind of a dark horse anti-hero figure. By the time Reigns finished off Sheamus to win his second WWE Championship, it spurred fan jubilation that Reigns certainly hadn't seen since his Shield days. This unlikely love affair would last a few more weeks before the cool factor rubbed off, and Reigns was sadly back to square one in terms of fan opinion. That's a shame, because watching this match either now or then, there's no denying the fact that Reigns plays the perfect ass-kicking anti-hero. Number 6, Roman Reigns vs Seth Rollins, Money in the Bank 2016. Now, like many matches on this list, this one seemed like a bit of a foregone conclusion, especially after Roman Reigns had seen off AJ Styles earlier in the year. It looked like there'd be no end to his WWE Championship reign, but we didn't know at the time that the big dog was caught up in wellness policy trouble, so he pretty much had to lose the title. Still, this match was an excellent one, with Seth Rollins showing some flashes of brilliance that, you know, kind of make him maybe the best wrestler of today's WWE roster. Him or AJ Styles, on the main roster certainly. I love Seth Rollins. I don't want to get too sidetracked. I love Seth Rollins. The ending sequence was truly spectacular, with Rollins countering a spear into a pedigree, then nailing a second pedigree because Roman Reigns is indestructible and a transformer and a cyborg, and picking up an unlikely crowd-popping victory. There was one final twist in the tale, of course, as Money in the Bank winner Dean Ambrose cashed in on the same night that he won the briefcase to become WWE Champion. Yes, this was the infamous night when all three former members of the Shield held the WWE Championship in one go. Sadly, this would eventually culminate in a bit of a disappointing Shield triple threat match, considering the amount of hype that match had had ever since it was first birthed in the brains of SMARC fans the world over. But at the same time, this match of Money in the Bank showed that Reigns can be part of an ongoing storyline without overpowering it. Number 5, Roman Reigns vs AJ Styles, Extreme Rules 2016. Yes, during this pay-per-view, the fans in New Jersey made sure to let Roman Reigns know that he sucked and that he couldn't wrestle, despite all the evidence to the contrary, not only in this list alone, but in this very match. Naturally, the fans all preferred the work rate of AJ Styles. Why not? He is, of course, one of the finest wrestlers on Earth today. However, as far as this no DQ match goes, Reigns and Styles let it all hang out in this lengthy brawl with plenty of outside interference and broken scenery. This match really proves that Reigns especially shines in those chaotic Attitude Era skirmishes, as he possesses both the athleticism and the self-sacrificing bumping ability to pull them off exceptionally well. Styles obviously has a background as a bit of a TNA spot monkey before he learned how to become the best wrestler in the world, and he has a similar DNA, splatting on dazzling and risky bumps while fans awed at his natural grace. Number 4, Roman Reigns vs Braun Strowman, Fastlane 2017. Now, this match is a little bit different because most of the other matches on this list have Reigns as the unexperienced little babby to a more experienced opponent, but in this case, Braun Strowman was the little babby. That sounds a bit stupid. However, yes, this was an example of Roman Reigns guiding a very green monster among men through an excellent bout. The lesson, as always, is that sometimes there's no smart in SMARC, because the SMARC fans were booing. Do you see what I've done? As far as this match goes, it was actually the best match of a slightly flat Raw pay-per-view. If ever there was a time to position Reigns as having to conquer insurmountable odds like a long-haired Jonathan Cena, this was the moment, as Strowman had finally come into his own as a believable giant at the end of the beanstalk. Reigns was the perfect ball of kinetic energy meant for bouncing off of this monster, and really made Strowman look like a bearded roadblock. The two would arguably have WWE's best main roster feud of 2017, in part thanks to matches like this, where their willingness to take eye-popping risks played off each other very well indeed. Number 3, Roman Reigns vs John Cena, No Mercy 2017. Now, at a certain point in time, this is the exact match that many fans would have dreaded the most, the irresistible douche versus the immovable jerk. Now, hold on a second, this was a little bit better than that. Cena by now was a lot less hated than he was in his prime, and definitely scored some brownie points with the Reigns resistance movement by spending weeks ruining him with work shoot insults that went just beyond your bog-standard hype-building feud promo. One thing was certain, at least, barring a draw, fans would, in theory, be thrilled to see one of their least favourite wrestlers go down in defeat. That happened when Reigns shook off 3 attitude adjustments before polishing Cena off with a solitary spear. That was a little bit of a strange decision, but it didn't ruin the quality of the match too much. Now, honestly, this is maybe one of the weaker matches on this list, but we put it this high just for the sheer unique factor of seeing Cena get cheered so much. Remember that "If Cena loses, we riot" sign in the crowd? That made me genuinely laugh. That made me laugh a lot at home in my bedroom on my own with a big bowl of cereal. This one-and-done match was meant to be a torch passer, with the now part-time Cena handing the keys of the kingdom over to Roman Reigns so that he could be the guy, in a manner that's more than just empty branding. In fairness to Cena, apart from those promos where he totally wrecked Roman Reigns in front of everybody, he couldn't have done more in the match to establish Reigns as his clear successor, even if the crowd was having none of it. They kept booing, but in fairness, Reigns kept delivering. Number 2, Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins from the Raw of February 19th, 2018. This was the first leg of that ambitious, excellent 7-man gauntlet match that took up 2/3 of the Elimination Chamber go-home show. Having Reigns pinned clean by a fellow babyface in Raw's first hour was the clue that he was winning the Chamber on Sunday, but no matter, some truly inspired wrestling was delivered on this night. Rollins was certainly the match's MVP, but Roman carried his own weight admirably. Reigns and Rollins' long-time friendship and familiarity allowed them to go outside of the tried-and-true movesets of either man, veering into a more technically sound match than we're used to seeing out of Roman. This gauntlet as a whole showed each wrestler in a slightly different light, with Reigns shining with some versatility that was perhaps unexpected by many of the fans. Obviously, I love Seth Rollins loads, and I really wanted to talk about him more, but let's press on to number 1. Number 1, Roman Reigns versus Brocky Lesnar, WrestleMania 31. Now, technically, we've bent our own rules about keeping this to singles matches a tiny little bit, because this obviously turned into a triple threat when Seth Rollins cashed in his Money in the Bank contract. But since Lesnar and Reigns did a lot of the heavy lifting before that moment, we think it's fair that this match makes the cut. It's true that Rollins' sensational run-in is what's most remembered about this WrestleMania main event, but the match itself was truly Mania main event level worthy. Lesnar tossed Reigns to and fro, unleashing the usual endless diet of suplexes before striking him with some legitimately vicious clubbing blows. The Reigns Superman comeback was expected by many, but Reigns was taking enough of a massive beating to make his comeback worth its existence. The blood loss on Lesnar's part spiked the tension, as did the testosterone-fueled finisher exchange prior to Rollins' music hitting. It's truly one of the most brutal WrestleMania main events in history, and a far cry from some of Lesnar's more underwhelming matches of the past few years. WrestleMania 34. WrestleMania 34. Sorry, I have a cold. Both men were truly inspired and allowed themselves to be bludgeoned in the name of entertainment. Sports entertainment. Perhaps in hindsight, if you get rid of the cash-in, even a win here may have swung a little fan sentiment Roman Reigns' way. That's how good this match was. So that's our list. Thank you very much for watching. Which Roman Reigns matches did we miss out? Leave your thoughts in the comments section down below. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter at JackTheJobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic, and you can check out our Patreon too, patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, obviously, to join us.